NASA says it is considering studying sex in space, as it is crucial for future long-haul missions to the Moon and Mars, that could see astronauts away from Earth for years. This was said in response to a study proposal by a team of 5 Canadian academics, who called on space organizations to embrace the new discipline of space sex study. The study explained that understanding sex and how it will work in a low-gravity environment is essential to the success of deep space missions and building off-world settlements. While people going to space for long durations are currently professional astronauts, in the future, it is likely ever more civilians, including couples, will venture into orbit. Some of these will want to join the 62-mile high club, especially if proposals for future space hotels come to fruition. NASA has long avoided the question of sex between astronauts, having previously categorically insisted that no humans have ever had sex in space. Most space travelers, at least those going beyond the edge of space, have been professional astronauts. However, NASA has recently admitted it may be time to consider exploring the subject beyond tests using animal subjects. NASA spokesperson said, "We are primarily concerned with ensuring crew members' health and safety in space for long periods. The Human Research Program is working to mitigate the 5 hazards of human spaceflight and researching ways to help crews work together and remain emotionally prepared during their journey." NASA would take the appropriate steps to identify a future need for more in-depth study on reproductive health in space. It said there were currently no plans for a field or project office to explore the topic in any more detail, although that could change as we get closer to Mars travel. A trip to Mars is expected to take between 7 and 9 months each way, with more than a year on the surface of the red planet living under domes. It is possible that astronauts could conceive a baby and then give birth in space between leaving the Earth and arriving on the red planet. There are also plans for several new private space stations, including space tourists who could see couples travel to space together. While there have been some minor studies on the ISS looking at sex among animals, there has been no detailed look at how humans might copulate in orbit, and it goes beyond that. There has been an active attempt to avoid the subject. The study says that is changing, though, with researchers and major space players starting to look at the subject, especially new private industry players. Change is happening and opening avenues for a proposal to study sex in space. This is important, as it is currently unclear whether it would even be possible for humans to mate in space. Physicist and astronomer John Millis says, in an earlier interview, that male arousal would be challenging in space but technically possible. Similar issues would affect women in space, as vaginal fluids will tend to pool at the location of secretion in the absence of gravity. This wouldn't inhibit arousal necessarily, but I imagine it would be uncomfortable or unpleasant, he said. NASA spokesperson said its partners have studied the basic science of reproductive physiology in several species on the ISS. This has included fruit flies, worms, snails, jellyfish, fish, frogs, chicken eggs, and rodents, with other studies using bull and human sperm. Work has recently started to review the findings of these and other agency studies to look for any patterns that could show the impact of space on arousal. A 2018 study found that the data from all experiments in space on the subject are scanned, often conflicting, and do not provide enough information to definitively say whether or not reproductive, physiological processes can safely and successfully occur in a space environment. One issue is that data from animal reproduction doesn't apply to humans, and data in one space environment wouldn't tell of any long-term impact on a trip to Mars. This is why the researchers have called for better organized, widespread studies into human arousal in space. Research on human intimacy and sexuality in space, including their socio-cultural and psychological components, is inconsistent. No research has explored intimate relationships, nor the human experience of sexual functions and well-being, in space or space analog, or how any of this can affect crew performance. Rumors have circulated in the past about astronauts breaking the no-sex rule, particularly a couple that traveled to space together in 1992. NASA reiterated its claim that no astronauts have ever had sex in space, saying that its crew were professionals and maintained it on the ISS. Russian cosmonaut Valery Polyakov, who spent 437 days on the Mir space station in the 1990s, said psychologists told him he should take a sex doll with him and that the station had dirty movies available. He said. Eventually, his horniness faded after he ignored it for a long enough and didn't take a doll or make use of the movies. However, experts suggest that hoping this will happen in longer duration space flights, where people are away for 2 years or more, is naive. The team behind the study says it is just a matter of time before the big space agencies, private and public, accept the need to address sexuality in space. The proposal's details for a new field of space sex studies have been published in the Journal of Sex Research. Space poses significant challenges for human intimacy and sexuality. Little attention has been given to the sexological issues of human life in space. It is time for space organizations to embrace a new discipline, space sexology, the scientific study of extraterrestrial intimacy and sexuality. To make this case, the study draws attention to the lack of research on space intimacy and sexuality, discusses the risks and benefits of extraterrestrial eroticism, and proposes an initial biopsychosocial framework to envision a broad, collaborative scientific agenda on space sexology. The research underlines key anticipated challenges this innovative field faces and suggests solutions. The study concludes that space programs and exploration require a new perspective that holistically addresses humans' personal and sexual needs to pursue a spacefaring civilization.